Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the last Google I/O session in this track, and I think the last of all the sessions. This is analyzing and monetizing your iPhone apps. My name is Chrix Finne, and I'm a product manager on the mobile ads team at Google, and this is my colleague Jim Kelm. We're here to talk to you today about AdWords, AdSense, and Google Analytics for your apps. Just to get started, out there today, how many folks use Google AdWords today? Anybody? Got a few people. Awesome. How many use AdSense, either on their blog or whatever? Awesome. And how many people are using Google Analytics? Websites, look at this. Awesome. So this may be a little review for some of you guys, but we've got some exciting stuff in store. Yeah, that's really about it. We have some t-shirts and pamphlets for you at the end if you stick around. So just wanted to throw that out there, and we'll get started. This is Jim.
Cool. Thanks, Chrix. It's great. A lot of you are already familiar with some of the products we'll be talking about today. So yeah, let's jump in. Before we get started, I've always wanted something like this for a lot of meetings that I'm in. It's sort of the guide to this presentation, or how to get from now to happy hour. We're going to talk a little bit about platform. That'll be interesting. We're going to talk about the $100 free credit that you're getting. That should be really interesting. Afterwards, we're going to show a live implementation of Google Ads inside mobile applications. That's going to be really stressful for me and really amusing for you. And then Chrix is going to talk some more about analytics. And one other disclaimer before we begin. We're all developers here, or used to be developers in the case of me. And I'm used to engineering slides having a certain nostalgic aspect to them. But we're talking about monetization. We're talking about business. And so don't hold the prettiness of the business slides against them.
I mean, fundamentally, we know that you guys are all app developers, but also, these apps are becoming businesses in many folks' cases, and so that's important, and we're trying to speak to that too. So there's some very pretty slides. Thank you to our colleague Lauren Asui for all of her work, by the way.
So let's talk a little bit about the life cycle of an application. So it starts with you have an idea, you bounce it off your friends, you start hacking away at it, and before you know it, you got an app, and then you're sitting there, you're adding features to it, you're debugging it, you launch it, and you start to get users. And it starts to grow and grow and grow, and you're getting up in the morning and seeing how many downloads there were overnight, and it's a really exciting stage. And then at some point, you have enough users that you start to think about monetizing this thing. And in a sense, you've paid your app, and now your app starts paying you. You can put some ads in it, start to make revenue off that way. And before long, your app keeps growing. Phone might ring one day, and it's an agency or an advertiser on the other end, and they want to directly buy some inventory from you. And all of a sudden, you've got this robust business based on your application. So the good news is Google can be there for you all along the way, starting with the Android platform as a great place to build your apps, to analytics for measuring and improving your applications, to AdWords for promoting your applications, driving that growth just a little bit faster, AdSense for monetizing them, and then later on, when you start doing direct sales, you can use DoubleClick for publishers and manage your sales and then backfill with AdSense or even third-party ad networks. And we'll talk about all of those today. So let's start with building your app. So let's see, Chrix, you already asked about AdWords and AdSense. Anyone have an iPhone app out there? Okay, a bunch of people. Anyone have an Android app? And for those of you who, all right, yeah. For those of you who don't have Android apps, a lot of you are the remainers considering building Android apps in the near future. So yeah, so you've got company. As Vic was saying this morning, Android's got momentum, and it's a lot of people are developing for it, and even those that haven't built apps for it are planning to build them in the next 6 months. And also, as you heard this morning, Android devices are now shipping number 2 in the US market behind BlackBerry, which is incredible. So there's a lot of momentum here. And it's a great place to build your app. Now, you're already familiar with AdWords. One trend that we've started to see out there is developers using advertising in order to promote their apps early in the life cycle. We all know how important it is to achieve a certain level of downloads so that you end up in rankings in front of consumers and the sort of the burst of organic growth you can have when you get there. Fortunately, Google knows a little bit about the online advertising business, and we've taken this to mobile. And there's some powerful capabilities we can offer you. The first is reach. So across all of our ad networks, be they search or content, we can reach consumers and users wherever you need to. The second is targeting. So we've got some great ways to target ads by carrier, by device, by location, and all the ways that we traditionally do for desktop ads.
Things like, placements and keywords, obviously, and all of these things are all sort of fundamental.
And finally, there are the tools that you need in order to measure and monitor your campaigns and track conversion so that you know that your advertising is effective. As I was saying, we can reach users on a number of different networks. Earlier today, Vic was talking about how different advertisers have different needs when it comes to ad formats. And you can use the different formats that and the different functions we've created in order to reach users wherever they are, particularly when they're engaged in mobile. So for example, you can reach them in other mobile applications. You can reach them when they're browsing the web, which, as we heard today, despite rumors to the contrary, it's the #3 usage of these smartphones behind phone calls and texts. And you can reach them when they're doing mobile search. So one particular example of this that we've highlighted is the Corcoran Group. They're a real estate company in New York. They built an app in order to highlight their listings to prospective real estate purchasers, and they wanted to drive adoption as quickly as possible. They used an AdWord campaign and were able to boost their downloads by 20% with a minimal investment. And so that worked very well for them. And it's something that's portable to any app developer out there.
I kind of want to also just really stress the importance of how we see application advertising as one sort of route to bootstrapping your app, up into an app store, because these app stores have these ecosystems around featured and top X apps. It can be really important to get into that slot, and you can use advertising as one way to sort of bootstrap your way up there. Yeah. These sort of app ads are something that we're seeing a lot more developers doing, and we think it's providing a lot of usefulness to them. It's dead simple. You just link to the App Store in your ad. AdWords actually handles all the targeting on our end, and you can get going, probably just after this session if you guys want to.
Great. So it worked for Corcoran, and we'd like to see it work for you, which is why we're providing a $100 free advertising credit to any Google I/O developers that sign up for AdSense for mobile applications. So we would encourage you to use this $100, create some ads, see if you can drive some installs of your apps. And you can find out more information about that on google.com/mobileads. One important note, this applies not only to slides, but also to ads when you're trying to promote your applications. Definitely prettiness makes credibility. OK, earning from your app. So you've got some scale. You've got some users out there. And just as publishers monetize their traffic, you can monetize your usage. So that's where this opportunity is just growing every day. It was under $500 million last year, and it's going to quadruple within the next couple years. And it's really just the beginning. What we're seeing is large traditional advertisers are only starting to experiment in mobile. And largely, they're finding what all of you already know, which is that the users are there and that they're engaged. So we expect more and more advertising budget to go into mobile advertising. And as we find new, innovative ad formats to engage users appropriately in a mobile context, we expect the pie to just continue to grow. The click-to-call ads that were shown this morning were one example of them. These are testing incredibly well with advertisers, and they are proving to be a significant source of revenue to our publishers. So that's where AdSense comes in. So AdSense has enabled web publishers to monetize their traffic, and we have AdSense for mobile applications now, or AFMA as we sometimes call it, for mobile app developers. Same concept as putting ads on your website, put them in your mobile application, and start to earn money from your applications. So this has been in private beta for a while now with a small number of developers. As was announced this morning, we're opening it up to all the Google I/O attendees. And we look forward to your feedback. So what can AdSense for mobile applications offer you? First, AdSense has a great fill rate. Any ad network will talk about the revenue they can potentially provide, but in order to do that, they have to be able to fill the inventory, to sell your inventory to advertisers. AdSense offers that right from the start. Second is our focus on user experience. So in general, with Google products, we're constantly focused on the user, and we're trying to iterate and improve their experience with the product. Now you might say, well, what does that mean in the context of ads? What it means in ads is looking for new ways to match a user with an ad out there that would be the most relevant to them at this particular time or in this particular context. And we're constantly investing there. And those investments will yield improvements in the user experience of the ads in your application, because we want, over time, to provide more and more relevant ads. And then finally, we've got a great sales team. And they're on the phone every day with all of the agencies, brand advertisers, direct advertisers, and small and medium businesses out there. And they'd be happy to help sell your inventory, too. So you saw this morning in Vic's keynote, I think, 7 or 8 different new ad formats that we've done, including expandable ads, which we think are a great thing because they enable users to interact with the ads without leaving your application. You saw click-to-call, which is showing great traction with a category of advertisers that's really eager to get into it. And you even saw Google serving third-party ads, rich media ads, on our network. And so those are some examples of innovative ad formats that we've been rolling out and that we will continue to roll out across our network.
Yeah, really, this is really just the beginning of a whole wave, and you can see this across the industry of really interesting things that people are able to do with mobile devices, right? You know a user's location potentially, you know various other things that you can basically use to help deliver the most relevant information. That's both for search and ads and everything that we think about in Google Mobile. And as those things progress, that just brings sort of more value into the picture for you guys as developers, for our users, and for everyone, which is really exciting. It's really just the tip of the iceberg.
So now comes the demo. AdSense for mobile applications is really easy to implement, so easy that even product managers may be able to do so on stage. So let's give it a shot. So there's 3 key things here. There's basically modify your layout so you have an ad view. You may need to change some permissions. This is Android example. And then a little bit of code that you add. So let's get to it. All right. OK, so I said step 1 is modify layout. Actually, step 0 is make sure that you've got the jar, which we do. There's also one here for Google Analytics that Chrix will be talking about. All right, I'm in, by the way, this is the code for the Google I/O Android app, which we're going to be open sourcing if it isn't already. Hopefully some of you have seen it. We're going to modify that to put in an ad. So I've got the activity main XML file open. And at the end, we just put in a little ad view. So fairly straightforward. Step 2 was the permissions. So as was discussed in the keynote earlier today, we want to enable the internet, which we've done, and you probably already have in your applications. As a side note for analytics, we also want to enable access network state. So pretty straightforward. OK. Then all we need to do is do an import for AdSense. I've done a couple others, so I don't get some notifications. Analytics, same thing. Declare some strings. Client ID, app name, we did company name and keywords. And just create an ad view here. Now we're going to do an expandable ad, although it's going to be at the bottom of the screen expanding up, as opposed to earlier today there was one at the top of the screen expanding down. And then you show it. So it's really just a few lines of code. Let's go over into the emulator. OK. So just run it. OK. And that's all it takes to put a Vampire Diaries trailer ad in your application. So.
Nicely done, sir.
OK, so again, all we had to do there, it's so easy a PM could do it, was modify the layout, permission for the internet if you don't already have it, and add a little bit of code. So how do I get started? Well, if you don't already have an AdSense account, sign up for it. And then once your account is activated, go into AdSense. Under the AdSense Setup tab, you'll find AdSense for mobile applications. Just select that and follow the steps to apply to the beta. When you registered for Google I/O, you got a Google I/O confirmation number. Use that number in the process when we ask for it, because it'll enable us to identify you as developers and give you a little bit of extra attention to help you get on board faster. So as I said earlier, some of you are going to have rising star applications that are just going to grow and grow and grow. And those are always great. And someday you may be approached by an agency or an advertiser that wants to buy directly from you. And I just wanted to note that Google does have tools to help you for that. That's what DoubleClick for Publishers was all about on desktop. It was that we had these publishers that reached a scale where they started doing their own direct sales. And they needed to be able to manage those sales. And then for the inventory that they didn't sell, they wanted to backfill it with AdSense or really whichever network would pay them the most. And that's what DoubleClick for Publishers was on desktop. And we've extended that to mobile. So Google can be there to grow with you as your business needs for your apps grows. So now I'm going to turn it over to Chrix to talk to you a little bit more about analytics.
Thanks so much, Tim. Get the thinger here. Cool. So I guess we've talked about sort of all the things that you can do to sort of turn your app into more of a business. And whether or not you're even using advertising in your application, you really want to know what's going on. And I hope that that's something that that desire is shared. I mean, this is something that has become sort of a core part of the web ecosystem over the last 10 years, that you take some traffic, coming into a website or a mobile app or whatever, and sort of slice and dice it to understand the types of things that your users are doing and to get insights about what they might want or might not be getting out of your site or app or whatever. And that's really what Google Analytics' core mission is all about. I noticed that a lot of you are already users on the web, which is great, so I apologize if some of this is background. But as of November, we are actually offering 2 SDKs for iPhone and Android apps to bring that same sort of goodness straight into your app. We know that most of your apps are connected and are in many ways similar to sort of web applications out there online. And by bringing analytics into your apps, you can start to get these same sorts of insights and other optimizations, basically, that you would be used to online. One thing that analytics really does well and that we're starting to bring to Android is referral tracking. So, say you actually are paying for traffic to your app, or you're linking to it from your website, or maybe you get a blog post. You really want to know whether or not all of those different traffic sources are providing value, right? Especially if you're paying for them, right? And we can start to do that, right? This is something that has been around for a while on the web, as I've said, and we're bringing it to apps. We're bringing the sorts of insights and reporting that you need to make sure your users are getting what they need out of your apps. Let's make sure I didn't miss anything before we move along. Yes, and then of course the last point is that this is all part of Google Analytics that many of you know and love already. Like the interface is the same, you come to the same front end, and you can understand what people are doing in your app in the same interface, even alongside the reports of what they may be doing on your website, which is just really cool. So let's take a look. This is actually our mobile devices report that we added to Google Analytics again when we launched back in November. This, along with a carrier report and what we call an advanced segment, lets you look at your mobile traffic in a little more sort of mobile-specific way. Obviously, most people out there on the web wouldn't care about your mobile device or your carrier, but we know that people that are in mobile do. So we can show you this. We can show you what sorts of different types of traffic patterns they're getting, what sorts of engagement and usage, and we can also split any of your mobile traffic. Maybe you have a site that has both mobile and regular desktop traffic. We can split any of the analytics reports by mobile using this advanced segment, which is pretty cool. Not really relevant to apps, but it's also really cool. So using these sorts of reports, you can understand what people are doing with mobile, but this is just a tiny, I think maybe 2 or 3% subset of all the different reports that are available in Google Analytics so that you understand really anything you can imagine about your users. I'm not gonna have time to go through them all today, but again, the basic idea is that we're bringing all of this power from Google Analytics out there on the web straight into apps. So let's talk a little bit more about exactly what we can do in Google Analytics for mobile apps. So as I've mentioned, the basic thing is aggregate usage tracking. We have sort of borrowed the concept of the page view, which is, again, a very sort of fundamental metric out there on the web. How many page views are you getting a day? How many unique visitors divided by page views are happening? All of these sorts of things, and brought it straight into your app. It's trivially easy, I'll show you in a second, to trigger a page view whenever you sort of load a new screen or a new level or whatever it may be in your app, and compare that to the other pages. You can start to get metrics like number of unique users in 7 days, time on site, time between different page views. You can start to see where people are really engaging with your app and where they may not be. And that can lead to really interesting insights. As I was mentioning, you can sort of start to slice these engagement metrics, again, all based on sort of that atom of the page view, into all sorts of different things. So you can talk about session length, you can talk about things like whether or not a user bounces at one page versus another, or whether maybe they come back and bounce, or if they're returning. There's a bunch of different ways of slicing that. And again, this is all just coming straight into the apps with very little effort on your guys' part. It really is just the equivalent of dropping that Google Analytics JavaScript snippet into any website, which I guess many of you already are familiar with. As I mentioned before, we have a few sort of mobile extras, such as device and carrier reporting, as well as this mobile segment that sort of lets you look at any traffic. Maybe you actually want to put all of your traffic into one analytics report. I know many people out there have apps that are actually very similar to a website out there, so you could actually line them up against each other and compare to see, say, if somebody is maybe engaging more with the sort of appified version of your service versus the web version. I know this is certainly true when you look at a lot of the big players out there like eBay. They have both a really great mobile website and a really great mobile app. I'm a big fan. And if I were them, I would want to know whether or not these two sort of similarly featured platforms are performing similarly or not. There's one other thing in the analytics sort of world that's a little less well known that we think is really exciting, especially for sort of the application use case, and that's called event tracking. I'm going to show you also how to set that up in a minute. But basically, sort of separate from this sort of basic page view-based reporting, analytics offers a flexible framework to just declare events, like something happened, right? Woohoo. And they can, you can name them anything. We actually have 3 different levels of hierarchy that you can group them into. So you can have, all the buttons in your app are a group, and maybe the different labels and the different sort of actions on those different buttons. And you can start to understand how often these things are occurring, basically, and how much value they're bringing you, which is pretty neat. You could imagine a scenario where you're a game or something, right? And you could actually, trigger an event every time somebody kills a monster, right? Okay, so that's something, but maybe you have a bunch of different monsters in your game that you want to try and tune. So you could just trigger an event and then understand how many monsters are actually being successfully killed by your users and tune them that way. I know that the World of Warcraft guys do this all the time. They're turning the knobs. So these are the sorts of insights you can start to get. Really, it's pretty neat to be able to sort of not worry about this. There's a lot of, in theory, any of this can be done on your guys' end as developers if you log and send stuff back, but we sort of are able to do this at scale and provide reports for you just really easily. And this is all made possible by sort of this intelligent SDK. Again, it's trivially easy to implement, as you'll see in a minute, but what the SDK allows you to not worry about are things like network and battery, things that actually are important considerations when you're building your mobile app. You don't want to run down the user's battery. You don't want to hang the app. Well, you should never put it in the main thread, but you don't want to hang the app if the network is down or anything like this. And so no matter how many events and page views or whatever else is going on that you're sending to our analytics SDK, it's going to intelligently batch those and sort of hang on to them until either a set dispatch interval hits, every minute or two or whatever, or until your app has some other sort of network activity that goes on, and then all you need to do is call the dispatch method and say, all right, time to phone home, and send those events back to Google Analytics. So it's actually pretty flexible, and we found that our developers that have adopted this so far have not really seen any impact on battery life or anything like that. So it's really pretty neat to be able to sort of get this pretty much for free. So that's all well and good, but why even do we offer Google Analytics for free, you may ask? Because of what you can do when you're using it with ads. This is, again, something that if you've used AdWords online, I hope you actually have it hooked up to your analytics account. But as I was saying before, tracking referrals into your app is a really powerful thing. And this is something that is now possible using the Android market and Google Analytics. So this is something that is honestly the reason that we provide it to the world, because it's so valuable for our AdWords advertisers to be able to see what traffic is coming in based on different campaigns, different keywords, search engines versus direct traffic, links on blogs versus some, news sites or whatever else. Once you see all of those referrals coming in and the different traffic sources, you can split them and understand, well, hey, I did this campaign, but nobody converted, or I did this other keyword, and everybody stayed on my site twice as long as I thought they would. These are the sorts of things you can start to understand in your app. So let me talk a little bit more about this funnel. Funnel is the sort of, sales speak for this, sorry. But anyway, basically, let's just imagine you have an app that you're trying to bootstrap, and you set up an ad campaign to say, hey, come download my app. And you have a couple different keywords there. So what you can do now is just make a special Android marketplace URL for that. It's pretty easy. You just append a referral equals parameter because it doesn't really work like it would on the web in the HTTP header. And you say, this is this campaign, this is this other one. So users go and start clicking on those links, and it sends them to the Android market download page, right? So they say, oh, OK, do I want this, do I not want this? And the Android market now, as of Android 1.6 back in November, is smart enough to take that referral string and pass it as an intent into the app. I think you guys have all heard a lot about Android intents if you've been to the sessions today. We're using that as well so that any app that's getting installed from some link that came from one of these referral strings gets that into its manifest, and you can look at it. And our analytics SDK, once the user has sort of downloaded and opened the app, will automatically pick that up and send that back as a traffic source, which is just really cool. And it's open. This referral technology is something that anybody can use in their app. You don't have to even be using the Google Analytics SDK. You just sort of look out for it, and you can process that on your end if you want to. So even other analytics providers or whoever else can sort of use this Android market pass-through to get that sort of granular referral level reporting on your user base, which is just really exciting. This is something that I'm not aware of any other sort of mobile app stores other than the Android market offer today. And there are some other solutions out there that do sort of a little hacky thing where they look at a device ID on one end and then the other end to see if a click came from another application. But this is really direct and pretty exciting because we think that this is making that sort of value that people are used to on the web available in people's apps. So this is great. There's one other pretty neat thing that we're actually just about to release out into the wild, which is AdSense. As Jim mentioned, you guys are all welcome to sign up for AdSense for mobile apps and apply for that today. And so once that starts going, you want to know about that too. As of about a year ago, we actually provide an AdSense integration into ad analytics on the web, and we're adding that to mobile apps now too. So what you can see here is a report which starts to tell you which pages, which views of your app are monetizing well or are not. So that's that's really important. You don't want to just know, once you started running ads in your app, what the top line is. You want to know, well, are my users getting value from my ads? Are they getting value from the ads in all the different parts of my application where there may be ads? Are they ads put in the right spot in the application to sort of deliver the most value and the most clicks from users because they click when they think the ad is useful? Do they, actually, do the users that are coming in through these different referral channels click on my ads or not? These are all the sorts of insights that you can start to get with this AdSense report. This is not yet part of the public Google Analytics SDK just because AdSense for mobile apps isn't yet public. But once you're signed up and running, you can ask for this from your Google contact, and we'll send it right along. So that's pretty exciting. So what do you need to do to sign up? As I've mentioned several times, it really is trivially easy. Again, so easy a product manager can do it. So we're going to go through that right now. You just go to google.com/analytics. You can sign up for what's called a web property ID. You probably already have one of these if you have it for your website. We recommend that you create a separate sort of sub-property for your app. But if you want to sort of collate them together, you can. You can even name the page views the same thing, and it'll actually add together if you have sort of one-to-one mappings of stuff in your app to stuff on your website, which is neat. You just import our tracking SDK as very similar to what we did with AdSense, and then you send a few function calls out to track your page views and events. So let's see what that looks like. We should shut down the thing here first. Okay, there it goes. Cool. So again, I'm just going to go back and check my build path here. As you can see, we have the libgoogleanalytics.jar, which is right there, and that's available for download today if you'd like. And then we go back to our Android manifest and just verify. I set this up just beforehand, so I wouldn't make any typos, but we have access to the internet, so we can send those sort of batches of hits home, and we have the sort of network state here. What that's allowing the app to do, allowing the analytics SDK to do inside of your app is look at those HTTP requests, and when you want, piggyback on them before they get closed. So if you call the dispatch method, it'll just sort of hop in there, and then you don't get any excess network or battery overhead, which is really cool. And let's go look at what it looks like in good old Void main here. So here we are. So Google Analytics Tracker is the library that we're importing. That's really all you have to do. As you can see at the beginning of our activity here, we've instantiated a tracker object. Just call it tracker. And so there's the instantiation of that. And then to call our first page view, all we need to do is say tracker.start. We put in that web property ID that you would have gotten signing up online. And I've put in 20 seconds here, so that's the default dispatch interval. If you leave that parameter out, it'll wait until you call the dispatch method on your piggybacking. But for this app, we're just going to send a message every 20 seconds, or however many have spooled up in that time. And then we just say track page view. It's really that easy. We're calling this page the Google I/O home screen page, but you can, of course, create a hierarchy just as you would with a website, and it works just the same. So that's pretty neat. And so what about events? As you can see, we have an event down there. But I had a few buttons in that app, if you remember up at the front, if you've used the app. What do you have to do to sort of maybe instrument one of these buttons? So let's go back to our layout here. Go find some of the buttons. Where are the buttons? Here we go. So here's the schedule button. Here's the map button. I already have the schedule button set up, so let's set up the map button. All I need to do is create an onClick method for the button. This is probably something you should have for your button already, I guess, but we don't in this case. So we're going to call it onMapClick. So that's good to go there. And then I just go back here, and we're going to create the onMapClick method. Down here, should look pretty similar to the schedule one. And we're just going to say tracker.trackEvent. This, again, are those 3 levels of hierarchy that I was mentioning before. This is going to be a click event for a button, and we're going to call this the map button. So you can also assign a value to any event, which is, again, if you actually have transactions happening, is pretty neat because it'll sort of add them all up, and you can compare them by the different sort of categories of events, which are driving more or fewer sort of dollars or points or whatever they are in your app. So I think that is all good to go. Don't forget the semicolon. And let's see what happens. Run. OK, we'll save. Just a second. go back to our emulator. And here it comes. So there we go. We got a second ad impression, which is great. And I can just go in here and button mash on my little buttons here, and those are now going to start sort of triggering these events and sending them back up to Google Analytics. So that's really all there is to it. So let's see what this actually looks like. Go back to Google Analytics here. I'm going to log into my demo account. So I have to sort of do the Julia Child thing here. Those clicks I just made aren't going to show up for a few hours, so I did a few yesterday. So, pull the casserole out. So here we go. So there we go. Look at that. Just yesterday we had a bunch of visits, and woo, we can sort of zoom in on that. Awesome. Apply. There we go. So we had 5 visits yesterday. We've had 11 visits today. And it's really easy to sort of see what's happening. As you can see, all of my traffic here is direct traffic because we've just been coming straight to the app from that emulator. But if I were to push this app out to the Android market, you can start to see those sorts of referral tracker splits right here in your traffic sources, which is pretty neat. As you can see today, we only have the one page in our little silly demo app, but we've gotten 16 unique views on that page in the last day, and 50% bounce rate. That's not so great. But you can start to dig into all these things in just the plethora of reports that analytics offers. So what happened with events? Oh, there's events. I can also just get a really easy roll-up of the events that have occurred. We actually had 46 yesterday and 20 today so far, which is exciting, though I don't know if I like the slope of that graph. I can look in here, and you can see that all 66 of those events were actually part of a button, which is intended. And we can go down and just break it down by the schedule, map, and sessions buttons. You can see how many events were triggered, how many events were unique per event type, and how much value you're getting. You can see that the schedule button is actually driving a lot more value than the map one in this case. So whatever value you may ascertain from your app, you can start to understand that using events. It's very flexible and a great way to sort of get those sort of second-order insights into what people are actually doing rather than just looking at your pages, which is really cool. And that's really about it. The analytics SDK is very easy to get going. You just go to code.google.com/mobileanalytics/APIs/mobileanalytics, excuse me, and we have all of what I've shown you today documented, so you can get set right up. So let's go back to the presentation. Cool. Cool. And yeah, that's actually all there is to it. Google.com/mobile ads, I think you guys have seen a lot today. That's where you can get signed up for AdWords or AdSense for mobile apps. There is a sort of approval process for AdSense accounts just because we will end up paying you guys money, so hope you can understand that. And same thing for AdWords. If you want to get set up, you just sort of enter into the account sign-up process, and it's very easy. Analytics is even easier. You just go to code.google.com/APIs/mobileanalytics, and you can download the SDKs for iPhone or Android today. Jim and I are going to be hanging around after the presentation. I think it might be time for some T-shirts.
Yeah, we've got T-shirts in the back. We've also got flyers.
Yes, this is our colleague Lauren right by the back left door who has T-shirts and flyers if you're interested in signing up for AdSense. We thought we'd end a little bit early today because it is the end of the session, and you guys are obviously eager for happy hour. So thank you so much, and have a great trip home, those of you that made it out here.
Thanks, everyone.